behind us, right on the side of us. You could kind of see the thing moving through the woods.
All I can remember is flipping the light on, and I see this creature, and I knew in my heart, I knew in my mind, in the whole night, this isn't a man.
And then this thing walks across the road, takes a turn towards us, and then leaps over a guardrail.
Went to look forward, and there was a big black face.
Welcome to Squatch-D TV, exploring the Bigfoot mystery each week with your hosts, veteran researcher, author, and TV personality, the Squatch Detective, Steve Kulls, and from the Bigfoot Research Project of Kentucky, Chris Bennett. Sit back and buckle up as we bring you guests from around North America discussing the Bigfoot phenomena, but not without a few laughs, too. Here are your hosts, Steve and Chris.
And good evening, cyberspace. Welcome to Squatch-D TV for today's date, January 23rd, 2022. I'm your host, your guide, the Squatch Detective, Steve Kulls, along with my very much warmer co-host, Mr. Chris Bennett, right down there.
Yeah, we've been in like in the mid-20s, so it's not really warm here, but compared to what you guys have up there or been having, I guess I feel like I must be living in the tropics.
So I'm going to bring Larry Beans Baxter on right now. He is the author of Abandoned, basically the true story of Portlock, Alaska. Just sum that up. He's from Alaska. And what was your temperature a couple of nights ago?
Actually, right now, I think we're warmer than both of you guys. We're in the mid 30s right now. We're having a little bit of a thaw. It's going to get back down in the 20s next week, though.
20s. Two nights ago, I get up middle of the night. I'm awake. I'm going to sit in the computer. I'm going to look at the news real quick. And I look down at my Alexa that sits in front of my computer. And it's one of the video ones. And the temperature was minus 16 degrees.
Well, it depends on where you're at. Alaska's such a big state. It can be 40 degrees here, and up in Fairbanks, it could be negative 60. So yeah, it just depends on where you're at. I live down in South Central on the Kenai Peninsula. It's almost in the banana belt.
So it's amazing that it was like, I'm not, minus 4, minus 5 I've seen. Minus 16, I'm like, I didn't want to go out there. Not at all.
Oh, man. Yeah, any place that if you spill your coffee and it hits the ground as a solid, that's too cold for me.
Yeah, I mean, if I was vaping, I'd probably blow the vape out and it'd probably come down as snow.
Yeah.
It was that cold. It was just... So, well, let's do our usual roll call. Each week we do our roll call and say hi to the folks in the group and in the chat tonight. And we got a full house here tonight. And the first in was earlier today with Sam DeLoach. Brent over at the Tall Ones was in. Lance Windsor, Alan Hedges, Cindy Finn is back. Of course, Jay Birch from Bigfoot Barbecue and Camp Cookbook.
Jay.
Sharon's in the house.
Sure.
Who else? Let's go down. Uncle Bones,
Uncle
Bigfoot
Bones.
New York Todd, Don Fuller. Don, hello.
Hey, Don.
Going down. Gary Johnson, hello.
Gary.
Joe over at Western New York Bigfoot Investigation Group. Hello, Joe. Sorry, I gotta scroll in.
There, the chat was hopping. Looks like a lot of people have been in there.
Rod Dupree's in, of course.
Hey,
Mick.
Rod. Hey, Mick.
Mick is in the house.
You,
Lester Taylor, Leon over at Bigfoot
Lester.
Okanagan.
hey, Leon. Good to see
My
you.
Eyes is in. Bonsoir. Bonsoir. Who else? Let's keep on going. Mr. Eyes, I think we've already said hello to. Arthur watches on in the town. In town. Grasshopper is in.
Grasshopper.
Sorry if I am trying not to miss any. Bob Lemley. Bob is in there.
Hey, Bob.
He's like, hey, I made it in on time. Imagine that.
We're glad
Prairie
to have
Fire's
you,
in the house.
Prairie Fire.
Nikki over at Harry Man, Hoaxes and Hoodwings.
Hey, Nikki.
I
Good
made
to see
it. Go Patty Troy. Welcome, Patty.
Patty.
Mike Ann is in the house. Hello, Mike from Tactical Bigfoot
Mike.
Research.
Yeah.
OT.
Welcome.
20s. It's been minus 30 here.
Oh, no. That's too cold.
Johnny Diggs in the
Johnny,
house.
good to see you.
So, life is a flyway.
Life is a flyway.
So, boy, we got quite the crew in here. I just want to, hey, oh my God.
Man.
Chris from the 40 Slip is in the house.
Chris,
Roll
good
that
to see you.
little big one. So good to see y'all here, and we're glad to be back. We took a couple of weeks off. Of course, a couple of weeks ago, I had a work commitment. Every once in a great while, I have to shuffle off and do an overnight at work. Usually that's why we took the summer off, but one of our inventories had gotten postponed till, of course, January, and did that. And then the following week was our first real cold day. It only hit like -5, which now is actually kind of warm sounding to me. And at midnight, the internet went out, didn't come back on until like 2:00 in the afternoon the next day, which would be Sunday. So it was like, you know what? I haven't had internet all day to set a show up, research. No, I just was like, I'm done with it, because I was busy doing other little projects because I'm not glued to the computer. So here we are today, and I'm kind of glad we waited today, and we got a great guest on tonight, and we're going to be talking about a bunch of things. First, I want to talk a real quick thing about a little incident that happened in Danville, Virginia, over the weekend. And there was an accident involving a tractor trailer carrying, get this, over 100 monkeys.
Oh.
And 4 of them escaped. So you can imagine with
a truckload of monkeys.
Truckload of monkeys.
That doesn't even sound believable, Steve. I'm sorry.
And they had pictures on the news agencies. They had pictures of one of the monkeys in the tree. And then they said there was a report of a gunshot, so they don't know if they were shooting the monkeys that escaped or what. I'm like, oh, this just sounds like a horrible disaster movie coming up. But
shoot that thing.
And it's we're also joined by Jimbo and
Frank Smith,
Angel Nolan, Frank Smith,
Angel,
and everybody is in. But yeah, so here you have a few monkeys still on the loose, I would assume.
Gary.
The funny thing is my cousins had lived in Danville, Georgia for many, many years, and they just recently moved out. So not only did I post that, there was comments by my other cousins. Hey, see what you missed?
Can you imagine just driving down the road, seeing a semi like have an accident, like run off the road, and then all of a sudden just see a bunch of monkeys running away?
that would kind of sound.
That's beyond me. I can't picture it. I just really can't. That's too unbelievable. A semi-truck load of monkeys.
The only other more unbelievable thing is if the truck jackknifed to avoid a van full of nuns.
Then the nuns were fighting the monkeys in the middle of the road.
Yeah. The power of Christ compels you. Yeah, so.
Well, the
I'm
truth
sure that-
can be stranger than fiction sometimes, though. So it's really odd.
Just think, in about 25, 30 years, there's going to be some Bigfoot sightings in that area, and somebody's going to say, there was a truckload of gorillas that derailed here.
Train full of gorillas derailed.
Yeah.
Yeah, one was named Krakow. Oh yes, get the bad what was that on Johnny Dangerously? The where they would pass the story in the prison one to another, and by the time it got to Johnny Dangerously, he knew automatically what it meant, even though they said nothing like it. That's not what I said. Yeah, but I know this communication line. So
Joe's killing me in chat over. He says, I used to have a barrel of monkeys when I was a kid.
Hey, Joe, that's a good question for Joe. Joe does a lot of trucking. Joe, have you ever transported a truck full of monkeys? That'd be pretty interesting.
Well, hold on. You said it was in Georgia, right?
No, it was in Virginia.
Virginia? Oh, those things will be 8 by the end of the month.
Can you imagine the noise, walking by here's the tractor trailer parked at the truck stop. The truck driver's in there getting his piece of pie in the diner, and people walking by the tractor trailer, listening to the noises coming from.
Or they'll make their way to DC. They'll make their way to DC and nobody will notice.
Very true. Yeah, that was next year's election lineup. God. Yeah, it's that. Not only is it funny, but it's incredibly true.
Heaven help them if they had a truckload of monkeys escape here. The locals would eat them for sure, because they'd be like, hey, this is the kind of funniest tasting squirrel I've ever eaten.
I call it a squirrel.
Yeah, squirrel.
Squirrel. Why is? Excuse me. You have squirrel on the menu today. Why is it in parentheses?
Yeah.
But we have a lot to cover tonight. This is not gonna be the first time and last time this is up tonight. But Larry is the author of Abandoned: The History and Horror of Port Chatham, Alaska. Port Chatham is commonly also referred to as Portlock, I believe. And I
like that cover photo. That looks like a Bob Ross painting.
That's the cabin. That is the one remaining cabin left in Portlock.
There's actually a couple of more up in the wood, which I'm surprised they didn't show those on the show, Alaskan Killer Bigfoot. But there's a couple of more cabins up in that wood line there behind it. But this is the only one. This is the one you can see from the water. This is the one that you see most of the time when people come into the Portlock on a boat, and they'll snap a picture of that cabin.
It almost makes you wonder, did they omit those for a particular reason, because they wanted to make the woods behind it sound even more mysterious?
I thought for sure they were saving them for another episode when they were going to discover them, like they discovered this cabin. Like you can see this cabin in the background when they're pulling their boat on shore, and one of the guys goes, "Hey guys, I found a cabin." I'm like, well, if you would have lifted your head up just a second ago, it would have been right in front of you. But
yeah, the cabin is seen from the shore.
Yeah, I really thought they were going to discover those other cabins, and they never mentioned them, which I thought was kind of weird. Maybe they were saving those for the next season.
And the other thing is they kind of pawned it off like they were the first ones to go back. And
yes, that was it. The first time, so I watched the first episode twice, and the first time I watched it, one of the guys says, "So we're the first people in here in 70 years," and the leader of their little group says, "Yeah," and that's about the time I started throwing things at my TV. I know you said the first episode didn't bother you so bad, but that's about as far as I made it in the first episode without having almost rage quitting.
Well, then again, I did not know the history of that area. I came into it cold, and I started learning more. And I even found this picture of a Spokane, Washington group in 2018 that had gone in there, and there's the cabin.
Yeah,
I'm not sure which particular group that is, but
that's me on the right.
I thought so.
Yeah, and then it's Stephen Major. That's Mary Beth. The guy in the yellow is, I don't know his real name. They call him Toad, like I'm Beans. He's Toad. And then this is what is his name? It's Mary Beth's boyfriend.
The guy with the shotgun.
Yeah, that's actually my shotgun. But yeah, we were the first ones in there to film a show basically and look for Bigfoot. We obviously weren't the first people in there ever. I mean, people go in there to hunt and stuff, but we were the first ones in there, as far as I know, to look for Bigfoot and film a documentary looking for Bigfoot.
Should have took that can of spray paint with you, Larry, and shot on the back of that cabin. You're not first. Larry Baxter was here before you.
That's right. Yeah, so just not knowing that. Yeah, I don't blame you for having road rage. Right off the shoot on that particular episode. I'd be mad too if somebody said, "Oh, I was the first," and we're the first, and no, you're not. So yeah.
Well, that's probably all part of the script.
Well, yeah, they need to make it sound rather sensational,
right?
And in case people are wondering, I do have and none of the cast, with the exception of Ron Moorhead, who was a guest on one of the episodes. This is your actual cast of the programming. The way the show was set up, and we hate warning ahead, there are going to be some spoilers. But the way the show was set up was that by, I think, the third or fourth episode, Noah Craig there got too scared and went back home. And he was replaced by Frank Guy Beristoff over there on the far left. And I think by the sixth or seventh episode, I think there was 10 episodes. I think by the 10th episode, Kyle McDowell had a family emergency and he had to leave. And to tell you the truth, this all sounded quite predictable. I don't know if he really had a family emergency or that was just something they put in the script to make it sound, well, he's our camp security. And now we're out here by ourselves. And just to make it sound more ominous. Yeah. Now, am I surprised that a show, somebody had asked, are you surprised that a TV show would make false claims about Sasquatch related incidents? Well, I don't know if they made false claims about Sasquatch related incidents in the past. Did they have some weird stuff go on with them? I'm probably sure they had some weird stuff, but it's just, we'll get into it as we go along, but the fact that, okay, they say, oh, we were the first one. I can see a scripting, going into that, trying to say that, really knowing that's not true. But some of the way things broke down in the show, but we can talk, we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about the actual history of Portlock, because that's why we brought, Beans on. So, but just to show, I wanted to put some of these statistics up here. Now I did not use a very scientific, rating method. I just used with the Internet Movie Database had from their viewers' ratings. And so the first group is the three of the more recent Bigfoot programs that have been on: Alaskan Killer Bigfoot, Finding Bigfoot, and Expedition Bigfoot. And as you can see, Expedition Bigfoot out of the three is coming in at number 1 with a 5.5, followed by Alaskan Killer Bigfoot at 5.4. And Finding Bigfoot has really nosedived over the last. They're looking. If you look at the very bottom, the percentages of 1 ratings, you can see that 24% on Killer Bigfoot, 31% on Finding Bigfoot, and 22.9% on Expedition Bigfoot. And some very interesting things. You can see U.S. users, like on Alaskan Killer Bigfoot, U.S. users call it a 6.1. Non-U.S. users call it a 5.2. In retrospect, 4.0 in Finding Bigfoot to a 3.4. So there's not a biggest gap with Finding Bigfoot. But you see also a similar gap, but not quite as large as the Alaskan Killer Bigfoot program, maybe, with a 5.1 to a 4.6 between U.S. and non-U.S. viewers. Now, the reason why I put those up, I just find these stats kind of rather fascinating. What is actually, and if you look at it, this is a 5.4 and a 4.1 and a 5.5 out of 10 So you're not talking about huge numbers here. You're talking maybe about a 50% approval rating overall. But if you look at some of the upper stats, if you look, if you look at the Alaskan Killer Bigfoot, you have 36, 47, about 50% of the people rate that a 7 or higher. So that's not all that horrible. When you go to finding Bigfoot, you have like a 23, 28, 28 and 8. Maybe 36% rate that a 7 or higher. So that's not great. Expedition Bigfoot, the same token, 32, 47, and about the same. About 50% of the people rate Expedition Bigfoot. Oops, there we are. There we are. Sorry, my screens are blanking out because where my cursor is. So yeah, so you have
Bigfoot no longer king of the hill.
No, not not at least by ratings. As far as viewership, I don't know. I didn't pull those particular numbers up. Conversely, let's look at some of the older programs. Monster Quest coming in at a 7.1. And if you look at that, you have 40, 50, almost 70% of the ratings view that as 7 or higher. 70%. That's a monster number there. Yeah. The $10 million Bigfoot bounty, which still rates bigger than Finding Bigfoot at a 5.4. But look at the number there. You only have 16, 18, 21, 25, only 29% 7 or above.
Yeah,
so
I
most
can't believe it's that good because that
yeah. Well, the thing is, they have a lot of people in that particular group giving it a 4 or a 5 and a 6. So and then followed by the big 1, of course, which is always seems to be. Now look at the other show, Killing Bigfoot. Not many people have seen that show. It was aired, but it was not very well received. Yeah. And you look at 7 and above for 29%, and obviously this. For some reason, it's actually lower as a niche higher than Finding Bigfoot. And I think purely, I don't know why that is. But
honestly, I watched about 15 minutes of one episode of Killing Bigfoot, and I wished I could get that time back. I really do.
But never have I seen, which is kind of the amazing thing. If you look at the Finding Bigfoot number, if you look at the number of ones given to Finding Bigfoot, it's sitting at 31%, whereas the ones given to Killing Bigfoot was the highest at 51%. Another click up, another 0.5%, and another 0.1%, and it'll be 51.5, almost 52%. So you can see that most of the Bigfoot programming is hitting a 4 and a 5. The exception being Monster Quest, which I'm very proud to say I was on. So,
my all-time favorite.
Yeah. So, of course, different type of programs. And there's one thing I always like to point out is there's a big difference between a Bigfoot television series or a serial type of series, such as a Finding Bigfoot, where every week they're coming back. In fact, Finding Bigfoot really wasn't, I would say, necessarily a serial. And when I say serial, serial, meaning that you can watch each episode independently of one another. Whereas shows like Killing Bigfoot, Mountain Monsters, Bigfoot Bounty, the Alaskan Killer Bigfoot, even not so much Expedition Bigfoot to a certain extent either. They're more compartmentalized. But like those programs, they need that hook to keep people coming back every week. So you see this type of behavior on some of these shows where you got to have a little bit of an exciting end or a build-up to get those people coming back. And, as one of my old coaches to get asses in the seats for the following week. Yeah. So,
man, I just, I lost lost my stomach for watching those dramatized shows. You know, the only one of those that I really enjoyed was Mountain Monsters, and you know it was no secret that was for entertainment. You know,
Right. Exactly.
But these other shows, they try to hide the fact that it's entertainment. Oh, this is really research. You know,
Well, if you look at those, I'm sorry, if you look at those ratings, like out of all of those shows, other than Monster Quest, Finding Bigfoot was the most honest.
Yeah, exactly.
The most realistic. But that's boring.
Yeah. And the other thing too is I think it's personality. You know, there's a lot of people that did not like Matt. They don't like his, you know, I know Matt, I get along with him fine. Now, but it's just, it may be a personality thing too. You know, I don't know why, you know, and sometimes, there's no doubt to me which show had the highest ratings. It was probably Finding Bigfoot. Because,
it went for like 10 seasons.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, by the way, Mark Webster out there. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. Welcome. Huh? Says Beans is my favorite Bigfooter. There you go.
Thank you, sir.
So anyway, let's get into this whole Portlock, Port Chatham thing. So
Steve, you're muted there, bud. I see.
Oh, I think he's having technical issues. So
I think so too.
So we're going to talk
okay,
while
man.
he figures that out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Portlock, I'll give a quick rundown. Portlock is the name of the town.
Yeah.
And it's located in Port Chatham. Right. So it's located at the southern tip of the Kenai Peninsula. And pretty much the names Portlock and Port Chatham can be used interchangeably. When I was researching my book, I got some property records and stuff from the area from back in the 40s and 30s.
Right.
And they pretty much use the names interchangeably. I've got like a bill of sale for the pool hall. And, you know, in one section, they're calling it in Portlock, and then Port Chatham. The names are pretty much used interchangeably.
Right.
And it was a town. It was founded in the early 1900s. And it was founded. I mean, there's a lot of great fishing here. Kachemak Bay here is considered the halibut capital of the world. There's a ton of fishing charters and fishing opportunities down here. And they took advantage of that. You know, there's a lot of natural resources down here. When the English came through here in the early 1700s, you know, they made note of it. The town is named for Captain Nathaniel Portlock, who was an English captain. He wrote in his logs about how, you know, amazing the area was, how many resources it had. And eventually a town was settled there in the early 1900s. And they built a big cannery there and a sawmill. They had a big cold storage facility, which was one of the biggest on the peninsula. And it was a booming town for the time. A lot of employees working at the cannery. They mostly employed the local natives. And for all intents and purposes, it was a good booming fishing village. And then in the by 1950, the town was abandoned. Nobody lived there anymore. They all moved up the coast a little bit to other villages like Nantinaq, Port Graham, Seldovia, Homer. And over the years, the place got a bad rap, a bad reputation. They talked about people going missing, people getting murdered, and the Nantinaq, which is the local natives' version of Bigfoot. It fits a lot of the same native definitions of Bigfoot. Big hairy thing, big hairy man. Sometimes they give it supernatural powers. It's a shapeshifter. Sometimes it's similar to the Wendigo, where they say it'll call people into the woods and they'll turn into Nantinaqs. You know, a lot of the same things you see across a lot of the other native cultures with the same legends. And it got a bad reputation. And in 2018, Stephen Major contacted me and he said, "Hey, I want to go in there and film a documentary. You know, you live nearby, you work in law enforcement. Could you come and be our security?" Which I was already into Bigfoot at this time. I always had a lifelong fascination with Bigfoot. And so I jumped at the opportunity to go with him. I thought it would be a great opportunity. Plus, I wanted to get in there and see Portlock, Port Chatham. So we got in there and filmed our documentary. And, we had some interesting things happen. We found some interesting stuff. It wasn't quite as exciting as Alaskan Killer Bigfoot, but it was honest. If we say we heard something, if we saw something, we did. Not a lot of drama. And I'm really proud of it. I think it was the first time somebody had been in there specifically with the purpose to look for Bigfoot and to document it.
Right. And to be very clear, according to, I caught this on a Facebook post. I was unable to find it again. But I'm trying to think about the one gentleman that it was on the program, the survivalist, Ash. He posted on his Facebook page that, hey, because they were catching a little bit of heat because every time something on the program would happen, they would hear some stuff or whatever, they would turn around and run back to camp. Oh, it's too dangerous. We need to go. And it got really frustrating. And then he had to make a comment that, hey, listen, we're not Bigfoot researchers. We weren't out there to get Bigfoot evidence. We were just trying to see the sustainability of rehabilitating the environment. And
there's a couple of instances where they find some hair and they just, I don't know what they did with it. I don't know if they picked it up or what. In one instance, you see them like picking it up and they're passing it back and forth with their bare hands, and somebody made a comment on their Facebook group about, did you guys keep the hair? Did you collect it? And that's their, well, we're not Bigfoot hunters, we're just there for this or that. And I mean, it wouldn't have been very hard at all for them to have a Bigfoot hunter on the team with them. So I don't understand why they wouldn't have taken that opportunity to have somebody knowledgeable in the subject with them to take care of things like that.
Yeah. Given the fact that, Jeff Meldrum has been on Discovery Plus, hundreds of times. You would think that somebody would have his number on speed dial. Hey, we found this, but no.
Dude, they could have just dropped a few strands of hair in the mail to Dr. Meldrum. I mean, he could have told him, well, it's a bear, or hey, it's something else.
Not to mention the fact you have this one guy on the team, Kyle McDowell, who is supposed to be this, and I'm sure he is. I mean, Ash Nantinaq has a history of being a survivalist, has had, a YouTube channel, has had social media, Instagram, prior to this TV show about survival stuff. And I think that's why they featured him so much. He was kind of their celebrity. The same thing with Kyle. I think Kyle also had some social media going about, tracking and being a hunter and whatnot. And I think that's why they kind of featured him a lot too. But as it always turns out to be, it's always the typical excuses. You have this evidence and then everything just seems to disappear. We saw that, of course, with the chimp DNA on Expedition Bigfoot last year. So it's like, why aren't we making a big deal of that? Well, funny. You're playing with chimp pheromones on one show, and the next show, you find chimp DNA.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of this, I think this show is for lack of a better term, is the offspring of Expedition Bigfoot. Expedition Bigfoot's, I mean, we can argue its popularity, but it's spawning a third season.
Yep.
And I think, if the entertainment industry does anything, they will beat a dead horse until it's embedded in the ground. Just look at, the reality TV. They just keep cranking it out. It's popular. We're going to keep doing the same thing. The superhero movies that are coming out now, which I love, I'm not complaining about those. Yeah. They're just cranking them out. And that's what they do. Something sticks, something's popular, and they just keep doing it. And in my opinion, I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. I think we're going to see a lot more of these type of shows.
Yep. That's unfortunate. And you can almost see the progression of that with the capture of Bigfoot. They did that fake years ago. They had the mermaid show. They had the megalodon show. So I think that was kind of almost like a precursor to all of this, where now we're going to send people out there which have some reputation and we're just going to create the scenarios around them. But so tell us more really about, what you think of the actual Bigfoot activity and, the Nantinaq activity, because I know we had talked a little bit in pre-show, and I believe the same way, is that there's some people that say, oh, nothing happened, and there's certain people that say it all happened. And, truth is always somewhere in the middle.
I agree. So there's an article that came out, I believe it was last year, basically where a gentleman had spoken to someone that says that there was a native elder. Her name was Melania Kell. And she had done an interview that had got picked up by a lot of newspapers about the Bigfoot activity in Portlock, about the Nantinaq. Well, last year there was an article that came out. Basically, one of her relatives said, some of the stuff she said wasn't true. She just was having fun with the interviewer. It was just kind of, and it's impolite, I guess, to correct an elder or to call them out, to basically correct them. So nobody said anything and they just let her run with it. Well, that article came out last year and people are trotting that thing around just saying like, oh, look here, look here. Well, I actually spoke to the gentleman that wrote that article, and he quoted me in the article, but he got it completely wrong. I mean, he quoted me I don't think he mentions my name, but I had told him there had been a show that had claimed to go to Portlock years and years ago. It wasn't on Travel Channel. It was on a different channel. It was a different Alaska show. I'm not going to mention the name of it because I actually do respect one of the researchers that was on the show. I just think it was, it was the production team that was goading them into doing what they were doing. Anyway, they lied about going to Portlock. They were supposed to fly a drone over the town or something like that. And they send the drone up and there's like a pickup truck standing behind them. And I'm like, wait, you can't drive there. Why is there a truck there? What the hell's going on? So obviously they fabricated that part of the show. So I was telling this newspaper reporter about that. I said, yeah, there was a TV show that claimed they went there. It wasn't true. And then we went there in 2018. Then we went back in 2019 for the Alaska Triangle. Well, this guy in the article says like, oh yeah, I spoke with one of the celebrities on one of these alleged reality shows, and he said they just filmed on the side of the road and fake tree knocks and all that. And I didn't say anything like that. Like dude just completely misquoted me. And I texted him back. I'm like, dude, you need to fix this. This is not right. And he said, oh, okay. And then he said, this fixed. And I went back and looked at the article. It still wasn't fixed. I contacted his editor and I'm like, dude, this dude is like, his journalistic integrity is like not right. Like something's up here. And the editor, I'll never forget that. I've never been treated this way. I was a police officer for 15 years, never been just shined on like this in my life. And the guy goes, oh, I'm sorry. I don't know. This is the editor of this publication. He goes, I'm sorry. I don't understand what the problem is. I guess I don't speak Sasquatch. And I mean, at that point, what do? You just got to throw your hands up and just be like, you know what, what am I going to do? Am I going to go fight these people? Like I'm just going to walk away.
That's why I believe in not talking to reporters other than telling them to go get stuffed. Then after that,
Well, I did an episode of my podcast about it where I basically tell the entire story, and I'm like, I will never talk to the press again about anything like this. But anyway, my point with that is a lot of people are trotting that article out as being the debunking, the end all be all of Port Chatham, Portlock, and maybe what he wrote about Melania is entirely true. I don't know, but based on my interactions with the gentleman, the whole article suffers from the boy who cried wolf syndrome. It's like maybe there's a grain of truth in there, but from my interaction with him and what he got wrong from what I told him, I find no veracity in the article at all. Sure. It's tough. I mean, maybe everything that he wrote about Melania is absolutely true, but after my interactions with him, I cannot endorse it at all. Like he was just, I don't know what the prize problem is. He thinks he's Hunter S. Thompson. He says he's a gonzo journalist. And so that article gets trotted out a lot as the debunking of Port Chatham. And then you've got the extreme other side that buy into like everybody in the town was massacred. Bigfoot ripped everybody apart, drove everybody out of town. And honestly, for my research, I think the truth is more in the middle. From what I've found, there was absolutely Bigfoot sightings in the area. There was absolutely people that disappeared there. There were people that were found dead there. But the abandonment of the town was more economic than it was people running away from the Nantinaq. The sawmill burned down, and a lot of people think that the cannery was the driving force behind the economy. And it did employ a lot of people, but the sawmill was really the backbone of the town, because the sawmill cut the wood for them to make the fish traps. And once the sawmill burned down, and I found an article, it's in the book, but I found an article where they talk about it, and they say it wasn't insured. The owner didn't have it insured. They decided not to rebuild, and that kind of killed the town. There was no more economic viability. There was no more jobs. So eventually the people trickled out of the town and eventually left. But again, you do have the history of Bigfoot sightings there. You have people that go up in the hills and hunt. You've got a miner that disappeared, although it wasn't the miner from the chrome mine that they were talking about on the show. But yeah, I mean, I think the truth behind Port Chatham, I think it's somewhere more in the middle. It's not to the extreme where it's all made up, and it's not to the, it's not the massacre that people make it out to be. It's a little bit more in the middle, which is, I think, the case for most things in life.
Yep. I agree. In reading some of the material, one of the posts I read, said there was a documented murder of a man that got hit on the head with something. I think it was 1931. I want to say
that would be Andrew Kamlock.
Yep. But they said the other ones, these dismembered bodies, there was never any press reports of any of this stuff. When I was writing the book, I got in touch with the state records department, and I had them help look. I was trying to find Mr. Kamlock's death certificate, because I thought if I could at least find some collaborative evidence that he died from blunt force trauma to the head. I mean, that's something, right? Yep.
So I worked with a nice lady there for a few days. The state records department's in Juneau, which is very far away.
Yeah.
So we corresponded back and forth over the phone and email, and she looked for several days for me, and eventually she came to me and she said, I can't find Mr. Kamlock's death certificate. She found his son's death certificate, which I had also found. But she said she couldn't find his death certificate. She had no explanation for why she couldn't find it. And she said, this is pretty funny. She said, maybe you should try the Homer Police Department. And I worked there at the time.
Yeah.
And I told her, I was like, no, I assure you they don't have it. And that was pretty much where I ended my search. I think, there's a lot of people out there that are a little bit more conspiracy minded that would say, oh, the guy was killed by a Bigfoot, so they scrubbed his death certificate. My opinion of it is, I mean, it's a small town in Alaska. This was before statehood. Yep. So there wasn't mandatory record keeping, stuff like that. I'm sure it might be tucked in the back of somebody's family Bible. It might be maybe in some church records in one of the villages somewhere, or it might have just, been lost to time.
If it was like 1931, I mean, there wouldn't be a whole lot of record keeping at that time anyway. When you died, they just took you out and stuck you in a hole somewhere. You're lucky if you had just a wooden marker.
Yeah, I mean, people would die at home, and the family would just take them out in the backyard and bury them. There wasn't a lot of
next
there wasn't
to the family dog.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of red tape and documentation.
Yeah. That is amazing. Has there been any activity there, which, like you said, you had experienced some stuff when you were out there? What were some of the experiences that you guys had, even though they may be minute?
Well, when we got there, we were walking around looking for the town site. We kept hearing this thumping in front of us. Like we'd walk a little ways and hear thump, 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 like something was in front of us. It just kept pacing us. And we heard it several times. We found some interesting tracks and impressions. Nothing that was really castable. You saw how the ground there is just a spongy, mossy mess. I don't know if you can see it very well, but I'll try and. Can you see that?
If we can't get you,
that's a track that we found that doesn't quite look like a bear.
Right, you can put that back up.
Yeah, okay. Let me throw that. But I mean, we had that. I don't recall. I don't think we heard any like vocalizations or anything.
Oh, I can see the outline. Yeah.
That's a 10.5 boot next to that.
It's pretty large, pretty wide.
Yeah. No claw marks on that, so I don't think it's a bear. But yeah, it was interesting. We had found this area. We were looking at the map and we found a freshwater stream, and we said, let's go look over there because that's where there's going to be wildlife. And we went over there. I think, I don't know, Steven had some name for it, like the Valley of Death or something. He likes to give, like they had no man's land on Killer Bigfoot. Steven likes to do that. He likes to give places like, but it helps, so you know what you're talking about. Like, okay, over here's the Valley of Death. Over here is the point of no return or whatever. So we were in this area that he had called the Valley of Death, which was kind of a wide open area. And it was just about time to turn around and go back to the boat. And me and Mary Beth, the female that was in the photo with us there, we were kind of walking together, and we both stopped. And she's like, man, do you feel like we're being watched? And I was like, yeah, something's weird. And I had a little Scout FLIR with me, and I took it out and I started FLIRing, and I got a FLIR. I had black was hot, and I could see something just inside the tree line, and it looked like, for lack of a better word, like Donkey Kong. It had like the cone head, wide shoulders, and it looked like it was doing this. It was raising its arms up and down. And again, we're there looking for Bigfoot. We're searching for Bigfoot. I see something in my FLIR that looks like Bigfoot. And you know what I did? I hand the FLIR to somebody else. I go, hey, look over there and see what you see.
Yeah.
Instead of hitting record. So I handed it to Toad, that young gentleman that was on the screen there. He was actually our cameraman's brother. He came to help carry like batteries and whatnot. And he was a young kid, and he looks through the FLIR scope and he goes, it looks like a dude. So finally he hands the FLIR back to me, and I hit record, and I actually did get it. I did get like a 30-second clip of it. By the time I hit record, it had kind of started to move back. It was like receding from us. And we went in that direction. We went after it and couldn't find it again. But the documentary is on YouTube now. You can watch it for free. It's called In Search of the Port Chatham Hairy Man. And the FLIR footage that I got is on that documentary. And you can see at one point, like it kind of looks like it takes a step, like it shuffles over to one side. And that's probably like, it's one of the most bizarre things that I've ever experienced. I don't have an explanation for it. I don't know what it was. It wasn't a bear.
I will get that description and link in the show description after the show then.
So podcast listeners, make sure you check out the YouTube channel and get that link.
Yeah. We're going to put the link into that. That's pretty amazing stuff. Yeah. I did order your book, by the way, so that's good. That'll be hitting me on the 28th because I'm curious to read all of that.
Yeah. Well, if anything, Alaskan Killer Bigfoot has given me a bump in sales.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it has.
Yeah. But something positive came out of it.
So has a lot of people been asking you about the show?
Oh yeah, I've gotten I don't know I've lost count of how many messages people have. I mean, a lot of well-respected people in the Bigfoot community have reached out to me, and they're like, "Are you involved in this? Do you know about this?" And it's got to be a thing now where I get one or two a day usually.
Wow. Well, I again, I want to thank you for coming on. I mean, that was so. What all these have there been any recent Bigfoot sightings in the Portlock area? I know that the area is abandoned, but has anybody come back and said, "Hey, this is what I saw"? I know one of the it's kind of funny because in reading the synopsis, they talk a lot to a lot of the Native Americans, and what they do is they put those filters on it to make it look like it was VHS or going back years, but some of the clothing that the folks were wearing seemed to be present day clothing. So you kind of could tell that, this isn't really an old interview. This is something new, and it's just being processors and filters. Have there been any recent Bigfoot or Nantinaq sightings?
So I haven't had any reported to me. Every once in a while, somebody will, back in, I haven't heard anything since probably like 2016 or so. I did have a gentleman. It was a secondhand encounter. I can't speak to the veracity of it because it's pretty out there. It's pretty far fetched, but it's, again, with the monkeys and the 18-wheeler, sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. I heard a guy say he was on a boat. He was out there fishing. I don't think he was actually in Port Chatham, but he was maybe in Crone Bay, somewhere very near there. And he saw a Bigfoot standing on the shore. And this is the most Alaskan thing ever. He grabs his rifle out of the cab and he shoots it. And he says, I swear to God, I hit it in the shoulder. He says the Bigfoot looks at him, reaches in his shoulder, digs out the bullet, shows it to the dude, and throws it in the water, and then takes off into the forest. And again, that's pretty far fetched. I mean, I don't know what to think about that, but it's kind of, that's a crazy story to make up.
Yeah. But then again, given the legends and the other tales that have come out of there, it doesn't seem all that far fetched. I mean, to think that, the like Alaskan Killer Bigfoot, like they had one where Ash was in the tree stand and, he's hearing chains, and you hear these chains in the background. They're hearing tree knocks. And I'm always wondering, the tree knocks sounded really crisp and clear to me. So I'm almost wondering if they were added in, or were they amplified, or were they real at all?
Well, that's the thing. I don't get a lot of reports of tree knocks up here. I hear more about vocalizations here than I do tree knocks. Tree knocks is more of a Pacific Northwest thing, like the Washington, Oregon area. I don't think our Bigfoot up here really tree knock that much. I think tree knock is something that I don't know anything about Bigfoot. Everything that I say is complete speculation and theory. So I'm not a Bigfoot expert. That's my disclaimer. But I have a theory that the Bigfoot up here, because the human population is so spread thin, they have so much room to run around, and they don't have to be around people if they don't want to be, that they're more prone to use vocalizations up here. And then in the Lower 48, where the humans are more within earshot, they use the tree knocks because it's a bit more subtle. Yeah, it's a bit more. It keeps them from being obvious. So that's just a theory I have. I don't know.
That's a really good theory. I mean, you think about it. Why would you be prone to tree knocking when the primary, at least we figured, is kind of a tactile form of communication where they're trying to keep, on the down low. So that makes a lot of sense. That's brilliant.
Yeah, it does. I like that.
Now you've been investigating Alaskan Bigfoot for quite some time. What are some of the best ones you've gotten firsthand outside of the Portlock area? We don't have this.
Outside of the Portlock, I have an area. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, because we don't get to talk about Alaska Bigfoot all that often. So this is.
I think some of the ones that come to mind with me, as far as here where I live, there's an area not too far from me called the Kenai National Wildlife Refuge, and there was a big fire that came through there here about 2 or 3 years ago. And after that, the reports and activity out of there have really died down. I haven't heard anything, so I don't know if the fire drove them out, killed them, but before that, I was getting some pretty interesting accounts coming out of there, roadside crossings, stuff like that. But the one that I like that sticks out in my mind is a lady and her husband were out kayaking around this lake, and they kind of kayaked. There's a campground on the lake, but you can go around this corner and you're kind of in a secluded area. Well, they had kayaked around this corner to the secluded area, And she says she looks up and she sees this guy standing on the shore, and he's holding these 2 huge trees, and he starts shaking them at her, you know. And she's like, what is this guy? She's like, what is this crazy guy doing? And she gets to looking at it. Well, it's a Bigfoot. And she said that her and her husband were like, what the hell, you know, and they got out of there. And later they went back and did I can't remember if it was her husband or her uncle got on shore and stood where the thing was standing. And she's like, it had to be like 7 feet tall. Like it was so much bigger than my husband or uncle, or whoever it was. And I think that was probably some kind of a territorial display or something, or aggression display, where it was shaking those trees that wanted them to get out of there. And then I've heard some vocalizations very, very close to that area. My wife and I both were tent camping one night, and we got up about 3:00 in the morning and just heard this roar off in the distance. It sounded like a T-Rex or something. And my wife, she's born and raised in Alaska. And I asked her, I'm like, what is that? And she's like, I don't know. I mean, it sounded way far away, so we didn't feel like we were in any danger. But that was back when I was a baby Bigfooter. And of course, I didn't have a recorder. I went out and bought a recorder after that camping trip. I know. Now I run it when I go camping. But yeah, I mean, that area, I think it was a good area for having a sighting or encounter. But after that fire went through there, it just it seems like it's died down. And it seems like the bears have moved back into that area since that fire went through. That's another theory that I have, is that bear and Bigfoot don't necessarily cohabitate if they don't have to. And part of that comes from Port Chatham, where there was an area that we found that was covered in blueberry bushes. I mean, almost like fields of blueberry bushes as far as you can see. And half the blueberry bushes had been stripped clean, and there was bear poop all over the place. And the other half hadn't been touched at all. It was almost like you were walking into somebody else's like territory. Like the bears wouldn't go over there. And Dr. Robert Alley wrote in Raincoat Sasquatch about a sighting that happened up here in Alaska of a boat captain that saw a bear walk out on the beach, you know, from like stage right or whatever, stop, sniff the air, turn around, go back the other way. And then he says a Bigfoot walks out down the beach from stage left, stops, sniff the air, turns around, goes the other way, almost like they were avoiding each other. And
well, it would make sense that they wouldn't want to compete against each other for survival, for food and stuff, you know.
And these are grizzly bears, correct? Or brown bears, not the
a mix bear. We have both brown and black bear here.
Oh, wonderful.
I have black bear in my backyard quite a bit, and then about 2 miles from my house over here behind me, a couple of years ago, there was a gentleman in the Coast Guard that was mauled by a brown bear on a trail. Yeah, not very far at all from my house.
Don't like bears.
And I take it the black bears are kind of like, you can scare them pretty easily away, but the brown bears are probably. I'm not too scared of black bears. I've usually you just yell at them and, raise your hands and they'll generally run away. I haven't had any problems out of black bears. Brown bears, I'm not as confident in my shooing skills on brown bears. Yeah, I don't think I necessarily would be myself.
Yeah. Actually, there's my bear spray right there.
Yeah, that's kind of a necessity where you live.
Yeah. Oh, I've got 2 cans upstairs, one by the front door, one by the back door, because we take our dogs outside all the time, and in the summertime, I almost never go outside without it.
Yeah. Wow.
Just
having a dog, I'd be afraid of up there in Alaska with all the bears running around.
Yeah. Well, they don't go outside by themselves. We never leave them unattended.
I don't think
big dogs or little dogs.
They're little French bulldogs.
Oh, okay.
I don't think I'd want to live in an area where I had to take bear spray to go check the mail.
It's actually the moose are more scary than the bears. Moose, those things, I think they're more dangerous than bears are. Those things they'll come after you in a heartbeat if you get between one and its calf, or they got those little tiny pea-sized brains and they just don't care. They'll walk right out in front of your car. They don't care.
Well, but the moose is not going to try to break in your back door to get to your refrigerator, though. That's the thing. You can kind of see them coming for a little ways. with bears, dude, you could be sitting in your living room and hear something break in the kitchen door, and hey, hello, Mr. Bear.
Yeah, that's only happened around here once that I know of. There was a guy that was he was renting a cabin, and this is back when I was working at the police department. And I was on my way home for lunch, and we got a call. This dude was in his cabin in the bathroom, and he heard somebody. He thought somebody broke in the house, and he pokes his head out the door, and there was a bear in his cabin rooting around in his kitchen. And so I got called off on my lunch break to go deal with it. And by the time I got there, the bear had already ran off. So I didn't even get to see it.
Yeah. Guy locked in the on the hopper. Not fair. Not fair at all.
Well, yeah.
But wow. Well, I think Larry, I don't know if you want to stick around. We do another hour a show. We can still keep talking about Bigfoot, or
yeah, sure. I think we're gonna have dinner about 7:00, so that would be perfect.
Okay, awesome. 7:00. And that's the other thing. There's a 4-hour difference between East Coast and Alaska. A lot of people don't know that Alaska is even an hour further out than California.
Yeah. Well, when I first moved here in the military, I'm from Kentucky originally, and
Chris,
bluegrass, go Cats, and my mother she did not understand time zones. She could not understand it, and I tried to explain it to her, and I would call her, and she'd be like, "It's Tuesday here. Is it Thursday there?"
Not quite over the international date line.
Yeah.
But it's kind of funny because not to get off topic, but I remember New Year's Eve. Chris called me at like 5 minutes after 12. My time. He goes, "Hello, I'm calling you from the past." It's still 2021 here. And that was kind of a good laugh. But yeah, it's just it's amazing how different the weather is, and how different not only in the spacing, the latitude spacing, but the time zone spacing. It's just wild to think. It's like you're in a whole nother world over there.
Well, we drove in September after the Boreal Bigfoot Expo. Steven and Adam and I drove up to Prudhoe Bay, which is at the very tip top of Alaska. From my driveway to Dead Horse, Alaska, which is where the oil fields are, was like 1,023 miles.
Wow. That is amazing. It's huge.
And that's one state. Yeah.
No, sorry. I have a dog misbehaving over here all the time. Yeah. See, Sherry is not home tonight. So usually I keep the door closed, but because the dogs are wandering around, I keep open because they'd be knocking on the door if I closed it. There's no human nearby. So and all of a sudden, the shepherd and the Shih Tzu decided to just brawl for a second, which
they got to have some attention,
No, they're just being dogs.
Yeah. You gotta love them.
At least they're not barky. So,
well, I wanted to ask Larry. Larry, do you go like tent camping ever? I wouldn't, yes. But I'm just asking you.
I do. There for a long time. I had just a regular tent. I'd throw it on the ground and sleep in that. But here in the last couple of years, I've actually got a truck tent that goes in the back of my truck, and that I feel a little bit safer in that because one, I'm like up off the ground, and I think that if a bear or something came around, I would have a better chance of hearing it before it just reached in the tent and tried to get me, as opposed to just being in a tent that's laying on the ground. So that my wife feels a lot safer in that. So that's typically what I use when I go out is the truck tent. I don't do a whole lot of like camping or hiking and camping,
right.
Just hiking into remote areas. But yeah, it can be pretty dangerous up here. You hear about people walking their dogs and getting trampled by moose and bear and stuff all the time. It's actually it frustrates me, not to turn this into a whole Second Amendment thing, but to hear people like nobody needs guns anymore, and I'm like, damn it, I do. I've got bears in my backyard.
Yeah. That's a good case.
Yeah.
I mean, typically, if you're living in New York City and you're walking around, go up to your apartment building, walk down to the deli, okay, maybe you don't need a high-powered rifle. But if you're living in Alaska, especially a remote Alaska, to where, dude, you got to have bear spray to go check your mail, it's probably not a bad idea.
Yeah. It's just, the world's a big place, and different places have different needs. So
right.
you can't just blanket the entire country and say this is the way it needs to be.
Well, camping too. I used to love camping, but where you're at, I don't think I could enjoy camping at all. It would probably just be like a paranoid thing, like be in the tent and I can't really drop off to sleep because I'm sitting here thinking, okay, well, what if Smokey the Bear decides he's going to reach in and grab my foot while I'm asleep?
Yeah, Chris is paranoid. He's going to be the next Timothy Treadwell.
Hey, you guys want to hear something cool about Timothy Treadwell? When I was in the academy, the police academy, the Alaska State Medical Examiner came and gave a presentation, and they actually showed us photos from his autopsy.
Ooh,
and it was about as gruesome as you would imagine.
Yeah, it didn't sound pretty. The same thing with his girlfriend got it too. And there's a lot of trepidation I would have even camping out in Alaska.
Well, funny, I don't think anything about going and throwing up a tent and camping here. We were in Washington a couple of years ago, and we were walking around in this logging area looking at the ground, and we found some mountain lion tracks. And that freaked me the hell out because bears I'm okay with, moose I'm okay with, and now all of a sudden, I don't know anything about mountain lions. Yeah. Now I'm scared.
Yeah, I guess I guess when you're in an area and you're acclimated to the animals, like for you, brown bear, big deal. I'll still camp here. But oh my God, a mountain lion? No way. Whereas somebody maybe that lives there would be like, oh, mountain lion? Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Brown bear, big problem. Myself, area I usually do. They have some black bear, but I have yet to see one. And I'm going to knock wood on that.
Yeah. Well, again, when I was in Washington, every campsite I went to had those bear storage boxes, the bear food boxes. And I never saw a bear while I was there. And every one of those campsites I went to had one of those storage boxes. I'm like, oh, there must be bear around here. Never saw one.
Yeah. Probably saw plenty of moose, though.
I saw a bunch of deer, actually. Deer was probably the most plentiful animal I saw while I was there.
Now, how did you get involved in all the Bigfoot stuff?
It was something I was always interested in. I grew up in Kentucky in Muhlenberg County. And I grew up across the street from a library, and I loved reading the monster books and the books about Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster, stuff like that. And I really just never grew out of it. I always, it was just something I was always fascinated with. And then when I got up here to Alaska, when I joined the military, I said, I don't care where the Army sends me as long as it's nowhere cold. And then straight to Alaska I went. And but I liked it so much I stayed. So there's that. But and then when I got up here, I'm in Alaska, so the cryptid of choice is obviously Bigfoot. And finally, I just kind of was like, I can go out and look for this thing myself. I don't have to watch people do it on TV. And I have a blast. I love going out. I love camping. I love hiking. And if I see something or find something great, if I don't, then I have a good time enjoying the outdoors.
Have you ever tried any gold panning?
I have not.
Mm-hmm. That's something I've always wanted to do.
Is there any big differences between? And I understand, in certain areas, like people think that Alaska is dark for X amount of months, but that's only in like the northern parts of Alaska, I believe. But
we have it down here too, but it's not to the extreme that they do. Whereas they'll have almost 24 hours of darkness. We'll have like 6 hours of daylight, something like that. I think at the peak of winter, we get like 5 hours of daylight. So we still have day and night. It's just we have really long nights and really short days.
Like what time would your night begin at?
Like in the peak of winter, you know, we have it starts getting dark around like 3-4 p.m.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that you know, that's not surprising. I mean, even here in New York, you know, at 5:30 p.m. it's dark. You know, at the peak of winter. I remember, in fact, I was doing a video review at work, and there it is at 5 o'clock, and you can see, you know, and then by the time 5:30 rolls around, it's pitch black out there, and the cameras are all night vision mode. So, yeah, you know, it's that's not too bad. Trying to think. So what do you think what's the major difference between living like in Alaska and in the 48s? I mean, are you guys experiencing the same change supply problems that the rest of the country is experiencing, or is it worse? Is it better?
Well, I think it depends on where you live. I like to tell people that Alaska is just an hour outside of Anchorage. So, you know, Anchorage is its own world. You know, it's a bigger city. And then when you get outside of there, most of the groceries and stuff in our grocery store has to come down from Anchorage. And I've noticed when I go to the grocery store lately, you know, I'll have 10 items on my list. They might have 6 of them or 5. And it's not to the point where I'm like hoarding stuff, but I'm a little concerned, especially up here. You know, we have to have everything either barged in or trucked up. And that's why I do have a lot of like emergency rations, stuff like that. I like to have a bunch of water on hand just for any type of emergencies. But, you know, we're a little bit of a hardier breed up here. You know, we can be a little bit more self-sufficient than, you know, people in the lower 48, especially the bigger cities. If worse comes to worse, I can go outside and shoot a rabbit or a moose or something and eat that. Yeah. But, yeah, we're seeing some emptier shelves at the grocery stores. I wouldn't say it's enough to panic about now, but it's concerning.
But, you know, surprisingly, you have damn good internet.
Yeah, it has to come in by dog sled.
Well, that's okay. Chris's internet's run by squirrels.
Yes, we have squirrels running a cage, keep it electrically powered.
Hey, well, just because I live in New York doesn't mean I don't live in the country too. People know where I live.
My parents lived in Kentucky, my whole life, and they're both passed away now. But I remember I moved up here and would go to their house to visit, and they would have like dial-up internet, and this was like, you know, 2007, 2008.
Yeah. And
I had high-speed internet at my house in Alaska, and go to their house in Kentucky and couldn't even watch a video on YouTube.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's true. There was parts in New York that did not have like that would not have high-speed internet, and over the last like 5-7 years, they've been really expanding the high-speed internet around the state. I mean, I live in a very rural part of Saratoga County, New York, and I got high-speed internet. So, you know,
well, I got to give them credit for in Kentucky. Or the last couple of years, especially, they've really been improving the services. Now we've got fiber optic now, and it's really fast. It's like, you know, a couple of hundred megabytes or megabit internet speed. So it's really, they've really improved.
And now they have the Critter Cooker 2.0.
Instead of squirrels, they probably got some of those rounded
it's
up.
It's a pot. You put the critter in it. You close the lid, and 2 hours later, you have a fabulous meal.
Let me ask you a question, Chris. I can say this because I'm from there. If a man and a woman get divorced in Kentucky, are they still cousins?
I don't know. Usually, you know, they stay married.
Those are the marriages that last.
Oh, that's terrible.
I don't know. There's a county in New York where the family tree only has one branch. So I got to kind of look out for that.
We all know Tennessee is where all that really goes on.
I think I said...
Yep, and Mary spilled the news. I knew this about 10 minutes ago. Love you guys going to bed. Buffalo lost in overtime. So...
It was Bills. Jay. Oh, sorry.
The Bills are
Buffalo
out.
Fans. So. Jay Fritz said, I lived in Muhlenberg County.
Yeah, I was born and raised there.
Yeah,
That is
coal
awesome.
mining country. That's kind of weird because in Kentucky, the western part of Kentucky is coal miner areas. The eastern part of Kentucky is coal miner areas. In the middle, we basically have nothing.
Caves.
Yeah, we got squirrels.
Well,
Squirrels and caves.
Well, you have that wonderful racetrack too.
Oh yeah, well that's up there at the top, the Churchill Downs. Yeah, that's in Louisville.
Kind of in a
probably claims that.
Hey, now come on, the Cincinnati airport's in Kentucky.
Yeah.
Remember
Well,
that, so.
Kentucky is just a few minutes drive away outside of Louisville.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, Louisville's about as much Kentucky as Anchorage is Alaska.
Yeah. It's completely different.
All right, getting back to the Bigfoot topic. So, in your research in Alaska, is the Bigfoot much different in size as it is to, say, the Pacific Northwest? Is it smaller? Is it bigger? Is it described any differently?
I think it's pretty comparable to the Pacific Northwest Bigfoot. Usually, between 7 and 8 foot tall. I think I've heard maybe a couple that have said 9 foot. I get a little skeptical at anything above 9 foot. I just don't. I mean, maybe,
Agreed.
but I think that's probably pretty comparable to the Pacific Northwest Bigfoot. I've heard of black ones, brown ones, cinnamon colored ones, and white ones.
And I agree with that because I really think too, and you being a former police officer, you probably have experienced that too, that when, somebody is so tall in comparison to where you're standing, after a certain height, you kind of lose that perception of how tall it really is.
Yeah. Well, eyewitness testimony is some of the most unreliable testimony that is out there, especially in a traumatic event or something that's scary or that puts the person through stress. I mean, I don't know how many like hit and runs that I went to, and you would hear, oh, it was a green car. Oh, it was a blue car. Oh, it was a black car. I mean, you wouldn't hear too many like, oh, it was a yellow car.
Right.
But if it was a dark colored car, you get all types of different variations of colors. But I think it's, go ahead.
The one thing I've always said about eyewitness testimony is it's some of the fine details can be unreliable, but like I said, we know it's a car.
Right.
That's why I have no problem if somebody says they saw a Bigfoot, we're a bunch of people and they're describing different sizes. We know they saw a Bigfoot. It's just nobody can, because of that different perceptions.
Yeah, I concur. And it's kind of frustrating when you have so many skeptics. Well, I don't want to call them skeptics because I think I'm skeptical. I'm talking about like scofftics. People are just like, it's not a thing. I don't understand, one, why those people feel compelled to watch Bigfoot videos and comment on Bigfoot videos, and two, like just how you can take something that's so there's just so many sightings and just take all that and just it's not, there's nothing to it.
I left. I actually left a Facebook group because there was a comment made, about people saying that, well, I trust this person and that person and that person, even though, I think that they may have thought they have seen a Bigfoot. And I'm like, thought? Thought? Now you're in my eyes, you're in my shoes, you're in my mind.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? I don't. If that's going to be the mentality of people. That,
well, you can be skeptical and not be an asshole.
Exactly.
You can be skeptical and not treat people cruelly. It is possible.
Yeah, well, I agree. I mean, I tend to have fun with the people that have the woo stuff, but I have no animosity necessarily towards them unless they're hurting people. When they start to hurt people because of their beliefs, then it kind of crosses the line. But somebody says, hey, I think Bigfoot's a shape-shifting portal jumping, UFO not. Power to you. I disagree with it. And this is the reason why I disagree with you, but I don't think you're a bad person because you believe that.
Yeah.
Now, if you start a Bigfoot cult and you're trying to make people believe that Bigfoot is healing you, I think that is adverse to the human condition.
Give me your life savings. I'll show you a Bigfoot.
Yeah, that too. That's been happening in British Columbia for a little while.
I don't know. I think that, again, like we were talking about the middle ground, I think that, open-minded, skeptical, but open to other things. I don't get on board with a lot of the woo stuff, but I'm not going to completely discount it. If somebody tells you something woo, hey, take it into, consideration, put it in your pocket, keep it in your toolbox for later. Maybe it'll come in handy, maybe not.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with being skeptical.
No, not at all. And you have to be, to keep your I'm sure Bean understands this, being a police officer, you have to keep, my background is, I've been a professional investigator for many, many years now, going into my 4th decade now, I think 5th decade. I don't know, but 30 plus years spanning over, since the late 80s. And you have to, when you get into these things, you have to take everything by a case-to-case basis. You have to have a bit of skepticism, but that doesn't mean you have to be a non-believer. If somebody says to me, hey, this is what happened, A, B, C, D, E, and it sounds reliable, then, hey, you know what? I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. If they turn around and have a paranormal experience, well, maybe there's a scientific explanation for it. And we've talked about this 1,000 times. Stuff like infrasound and the ability for the ability for a deer to disappear in the woods after it crosses the road, and you look and it's gone. It didn't necessarily jump through a portal, and then there's trauma to the mind and PTSD and all these other things that can add into somebody's perceptions that they have during an initial encounter. Where, hey,
Steve, have you ever had any training in trauma-informed interrogation and interviewing?
That I have not, actually.
It's kind of a new thing. But I think with a lot of that more woo stuff, you just have to take it into account. But as far as, what gets me is when people just state it as a fact, like Bigfoot, live underground. Okay, right. That's show your work. Like, show me a Bigfoot underground. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary,
proof. Yeah.
But yeah, that's the kind of stuff where I'm just like, man, I don't know. It kind of makes sense if you think about it, but you need to prove it.
Yeah. And then for every argument for that, there's probably an argument against that as well. Because living underground would give something, evolutionary, would give you something, a little bit more different, like the spiders that have lived underground for tens of thousands of years. Now they no longer have eyes. Yeah. So it's stuff like that. And I think, what was the movie, The Descent? That horror movie, The Descent, where they had found these underground people. And they didn't have eyes. And that was pretty smart, because they were thinking of the evolution and the adaptations. And people say, there's people that'll even argue to this day that, well, Bigfoot's not nocturnal. I don't see where it has any evidence why it would have a tapetum when none of the other great apes do. And some people even say none of the other primates. But the fact is that there are a dozen species of lower primates that do have tapetums, which is the mechanism in the eye. But I look at that, after 10,000 years, perhaps that was an evolutionary adaptation, that, maybe they originally didn't have tapetum lucidums. And then all of a sudden, because of their constant night, all of a sudden they start appearing. They're actually saying that in human evolution, in another 1,000 years, the pinky toe is going to disappear.
That's the most important toe.
Yeah.
That was if somebody was mentioning Peacemaker in the chat earlier, and they're getting tortured, and somebody's going to call off his pinky toe, and he goes, I won't be able to stand. That's the most important toe.
Well, don't ruin it for me. I just started watching The Peacemaker.
Oh, it's great. It's great.
I just started the first episode today, and I got into a little of the second episode, and I said, time to go work on the show.
It's worth it. But I think that one of the working theories that I have is basically, Bigfoot their entire.
Hey, and welcome, Edward.
Oh, there's Edward.
And Ed came up with a great conversation. In my humble opinion, after interviewing many people who witnessed Bigfoot, makes me believe we must have open mind all possibilities.
True. Yeah.
But
you can't. That's being a true skeptic. There, you keep an open mind. As well, maybe these people are seeing something. Maybe they're not seeing anything at all. Maybe they're seeing bears or something they're mistaking for Bigfoot. But you got to keep the mind open as to the possibility of what they're seeing.
Yeah, if the Bigfoot did blink out, you ask yourself why. Why did it blink out? Yeah. And I think that going to it must have been a portal, or they must be this or that. I think that is
quite a jump.
Cheapening the experience.
Yeah.
You need to find out why before you can come to any conclusion. And
right.
the most pertinent one is, of all the above reasons, the trauma-based type of reaction a person's mind is going through, and infrasound. Those are the two first ones that come right to the top of my head.
Right. I had a incident in Washington that I don't know if it was infrasound, but it was, I can't explain it. And I had separated from the group. It was our last night there. It was still daytime, but it was our last evening there. And I told the people I was with, I was like, go ahead. I got to use the bushes, and then I will follow you guys up, I'll catch up with you guys. And I was standing facing across the street, across the road that we were on. We were on a logging road, and I heard like a whisper behind me, like a whoosh, whoosh, and it just, boom, I was scared, like really scared. And I hurried up and caught up with the rest of the group. And for the rest of the evening, I just had this weird, like unnatural fear. And I thought that we were in this area. It was like a campground. There was like a big hill behind us. And I just felt like the Bigfoot was going to come over that hill, like the Zulu Nation, and just kill us. No. And I felt that way for a long time. And me and Will Ulmer were sitting around the campfire. And I mean, I had my gun on my hip. I'm thinking like something's going to happen. This is not good. And all of a sudden we heard this was like 3:00 in the morning, something like that. We heard a big boom. We heard this big, like, it didn't even sound like a tree knock. It sounded metallic. And then all of a sudden it was like somebody flipped a switch, and I was like, I'm not scared anymore. And Will had even said, like, is it just me or did the atmosphere change? It was so bizarre. I can't explain it. I don't know if it was infrasound or what, but it was weird.
Well, let me ask you another question. Is the area that you were in, because here's yet another explanation for that I also throw into it. Is the area you were in, was it an older area? Did it have a lot of Native American presence at one time? It was an old growth forest. I don't know if it was, it was near Colville, Washington. So I'm sure there was probably some Native American history in that area. So I always look at the history of an area as well. When something like that happens, look at the history of the area, because you may not have experienced anything cryptid at all. It might have been paranormal. And
it was so bizarre.
That's something to keep in mind too, is that, people trounce around some of the old, these old woods and Indian grounds and stuff like that. It could be completely something paranormal. Now, I know people are like, wow, Squatch Detective is saying, but I've had enough experience, because I also run a paranormal group, or I did. And, I know there is such a thing as the paranormal. Totally can't explain a totally different realm of things. I don't think Bigfoot is a paranormal thing. I think that there are phenomena that cross paths in this world all the time. That's why I think, some people say, well, there was a UFO flap when there was Bigfoot sightings, and that's just a coincidence. It happens. I mean, if somebody, it would be like saying, well, there was a dog sighting and there's humans nearby. Well, guess what? It's like these things happen. They're present. So they are going to cross paths once in a while. Doesn't mean that when they do cross paths means they're conjoined at the hip. It just means that it's just a happenstance. And that's the way I feel with a lot of it. And I think a lot of stuff that people go out in the woods looking for Bigfoot, they have a paranormal experience, and they automatically attribute that to a Bigfoot or a cryptid experience, when in actuality, what they're experiencing is something completely different.
Well,
That's another. Yeah, go ahead.
I got a question for Larry. I know it's probably been a while there, but do you remember ever feeling any sort of during that encounter? Did you feel any sort of fluttering or discomfort with one ear or the other? Or
No, it was and it wasn't like directly in my ear. It was
right.
It was kind of like over my right shoulder, just a little bit into the wood line. And as soon as it happened, I spun around and I fleared. I had my FLIR around my neck, and I fleared that area. Of course, I'm out looking for Bigfoot, but and my mind went to mountain lion because we had seen some mountain lion tracks not too long before this, and I don't know anything about my mountain lions, so I was a little worried about them. And I don't know what it could be. It just it was just bizarre. It's probably the most I don't want to say paranormal thing there, but it was probably the most unexplainable thing that had ever happened to me.
Edward asked the $1 million question, which normally, you know, a lot of, do you believe Bigfoot could be related to the Nephilim? And me, for one, I don't. I don't believe they're a people. I don't believe, because Nephilim were, were created by sons of Cain, I believe. I'm not 100% sure on that biblical, that portion of the Bible when it comes to the Nephilim. But, you know, that would mean they were giants that were created and they're supposed to have some evil intent. What I've seen twice definitely was, in fact, the one I've seen wasn't even an adult. It was a juvenile. So if they were truly Nephilim, people wouldn't be seeing juvenile Sasquatch, I think, because they were created as giants. So that's my own opinion. Certainly everybody's entitled to their own, but I don't think that, I think we're dealing with obviously I'm, as Steve Isdall calls me, as a knuckle dragging aper. Well, this knuckle dragging aper and says that I believe they're a descendant of somewhere in the primate line.
Yeah, my answer isn't any. It doesn't deviate from that at all. Pretty much, I think they're some kind of hominid or hominoid. I don't think they're anything that was. Well, I don't want to say they weren't written about in the Bible, but I don't think that they're Nephilim. I you know, some of the giants that show up in the Bible maybe might have some connection to them, but I think they're just some sort of animal that, for whatever reason, avoids us at all costs.
Sure. Yep. Yeah.
I want to add something to this. Throughout history, every historical account of every people anywhere has mention of hairy individuals, whether they be monsters, trolls, Nephilim. Okay. Now you got to remember now that the Bible is a history of the Israeli people, the nation of Israel. Oh, sure, it's got some religious teachings in there too, but it's mainly a history. So why wouldn't it be, you know, it's very possible they could have written about hairy beings. Of course, they kind of related their own story with what they were, just like the Nepalese did, you know, Tibet, all those cultures have a history of a hairy being. So I don't think the Bible would be any different. I mean, you're going to find accounts in there, but as to what they are, really, nobody knows. We have some ideas, we have some theories. So, you know, I don't think it's, you know, impossible that the Bible reference could have been discussing these, but as far as were they otherworldly or, were they angels or something? You know, of course, that's Bible references and just a different, Native Americans. You'll find all kinds of stories and throughout their history where they've discussed hairy creatures of some sort. Sometimes good, sometimes bad.
And don't forget, you know, Ezekiel seeing the flying wheel in the sky.
Yeah.
You know, for UFO, you know, for your ufologists out there.
Right. So all throughout history, throughout every culture, there's been mention of hairy, man-like creatures or beings. and everybody made of it what they will.
Yeah. Well, history is always constantly evolving, and it seems like dates are getting pushed back for things.
Yep.
And I just wonder if maybe there isn't always some kind of a primitive offshoot of humanity waiting in the wings to take over. Like maybe, millions of years ago, we were the Bigfoot, and then the dominant humanoids on the planet died off, and then we came out of the woods and took over. And this is just the next iteration of humanity laying low until we're gone, and they're going to come out and take over.
You never know.
Yeah.
You just never know where it comes. I mean, that's what makes this mystery so fascinating to me. Where did they come from? What are they? Why do they do what they do? Why, so many different interests, like biological interests and behavioral interests and sociological interests I have of, how they live and their family structure. Right. And even though primate studies have kind of showed us a grouping of that exactly, no primates live exactly the same. The same. Maybe they have generalities. And that's why I really think I really think that this needs to be brought forth and solved. And hopefully, still I can say hopefully within my lifetime. I'm not quite that confident anymore. Maybe 20 years ago I was, but not so much now. Because now I've been doing this now for what, 24 years. Yeah. Yeah, they were food.
Well, think about the Four Horsemen. Those guys. How many years were they looking? And some of them died without ever even having a sighting. And
I think all of them died.
Yeah, it can get discouraging.
Well, Grover Krantz was my personal favorite, my hero, and he got so desperate during his last years of life. It was reported that he was driving on logging roads, deserted backwoods logging roads at night with a high-powered rifle, hoping to have an encounter and shoot one. And that's desperation. But I can understand, he'd been working at it his whole life.
But I think we have the same desperation in the mind with some of these folks that were believers of the flesh and blood Bigfoot, and then all of a sudden they hit a certain age, and now they believe it's paranormal. They believe it's something supernatural. And I think part of that is the brain's inability to wrap itself that, hey, you know what? You can't solve this. And I think sometimes people get a little zonked on that. I think they go through a wrong track line because they can't, because nobody has been able to prove this phenomenon real. Right. And that's, and you listen to if you can sit there and listen to the Skoptics all day long and get very discouraged. We've all been there. I've been there, well, there's been no evidence of this and that and blah, blah. But there has, I don't care if science wants to accept it or not. There have been tracks found that defy explanation, that have been looked at by people. There have been sightings that are damned good sightings by professional observers, such as police officers. I know when I started into this field, I talked to a couple of them to start my career with. And very believable. These guys weren't crazy. They weren't kooks. They were trained to observe and report. And guess what? They had a Sasquatch sighting, and they observed and they reported. And to one of them, much to the detriment of their career. But that happens. I don't know if or what the attitude of the Alaskan people is towards Sasquatch. So what say you on that one?
It's pretty evenly split. There are the ones that think it's make believe, and the ones that are pretty open to it and or have had a experience. If you ask around enough, you'll find somebody that's either seen one or knows somebody that's has a story. I know when I was outed as being into Bigfoot, when I was still working at the police department, nobody nobody that worked there really kind of took it seriously. There were a couple of guys that were interested in it, but the higher ups, and that's one of the reasons I'm not a big conspiracy guy when it comes to Bigfoot either. Because when I retired, I was like third in command of the police department, and nobody ever set me down and said, like, if somebody comes in and says they saw a Bigfoot, this is what you tell them. So they thought I might as well have been out in the woods chasing Batman or something. You know, it wasn't real. It didn't exist.
You know, conversely, and this is a fact, that the initial reports in the logbooks at the Whitehall, New York Police Department with Bigfoot went missing, but there was a fire at the police station, so they could have very well been destroyed in the fire. So, you know, there's always a was there a cover up? I know they were told not to speak about it. They were told, and the reason why was they were getting so much media attention. So I can kind of understand. It wasn't necessarily because we need to cover this up. It's because the demand on our police department, and we have a very small police department of, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 guys, and this is becoming a little overbearing. You know, we're dealing with this.
That would make perfect sense. They don't want to go out on 8 calls a night to investigate Bigfoot reports. That would make perfect sense. And
they don't want to spend 4 or 5 hours of their days responding to media inquiries about it.
Right. Yeah.
When they have other things to do, such as budget and making sure that, you know, the crosswalk guard is in place.
Yeah. Well, I can recall several times where, you know, not having anything to do with Bigfoot or anything like that, but I just remember, you know, some meetings where we were like, okay, let's not make a big deal out of this because people, you know, will run off with it and it'll blow up, and it's not really that big of a deal, you know. So it wasn't so much, you know, don't talk about it, keep it quiet, but it's, you know, maybe let's not go posting on Facebook about this because people are going to think that, you know, there's a crime wave.
Yeah, exactly. And especially nowadays. I mean, nowadays, you know, social media will blow up something in a heartbeat, and there's so many different avenues between, you know, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, you know, Snapchat, all those places can blow things up. Facebook will blow those things up. Reddit will blow those things up incredibly. So you never know, you know, where they're coming from. Don Fuller asked, do you think any of the current guys on the probably Whitehall force are seeing them? I don't know. I don't have any ins with the Whitehall Police Department, so I don't know. Couldn't tell you. If they are, they're keeping it quiet to themselves. You know,
they'll write the book when they retire.
Yeah. As did Brian did write. Brian Goslin finally did write a book on that. So if anybody's out and about, check that out. Brian Goslin with Sue Goslin, his wife, wrote the book about his experience. Not a very thick book. You can probably read it in a day, maybe 2 days. Yeah. And
I've got it on my bookshelf over there somewhere. I have it.
Yep. Yeah, you know, it's kind of funny because I knew the other gentleman, Dan Gordon. In fact, you hear Brian and Dan on the intro to the show. When you hear that little montage of people talking about what they're seeing, Brian and Dan are both on there. Talking about what they're seeing, and 2 of those are police officers, and Dan passed away, several years back, unfortunately. But I always say this story, and I apologize for repeating it, but I wanted to say it for Beans's benefit. But I was there at a meeting one time, and really this is the first time they were sitting together talking about their accounts, and Dan is, Brian talked about his account, and then Dan was talking about his account, how it ran across the road, John. And then when he was done, he looked over at Brian and he goes, "And I thought you were crazy." Which was probably the funniest and really the most remarkable moment I think I ever remembered seeing that. The only other remarkable event that I said, wow, that kind of floored me after it happened was on the paranormal side when I was actually in the actual conjuring house. And also in the house was Andrea Perrone and her father, basically the father and one of the daughters that was in the house during that whole affair. And it wasn't as Hollywooded as Hollywood made it out to be, but there was stuff going on at that particular house, which was but just sitting there, standing there, and then thinking, then when I left, taking it all and go, God, I was just in the Conjuring house, this $1 million film, and I was in that place and it was completely by chance. I was at this convention, and one of my good friends, actually probably everybody remembers Bill Brock. He turned around and says, "Hey," he goes, "I'm really good friends with Corey. He owns the Conjuring house. You want to come over afterwards? After this is over, come on over. We'll give you the nickel tour." And when I got there was, Carl Johnson and Keith Johnson. I've known those guys for years. And there's Andrea Perrone with her dad sitting in the living room. I was like, wow. It was like, really, this is really cool. If you believe it or not, it doesn't matter. It's kind of still cool because it's ingrained in history and Hollywood history. And there I am in the middle of it, just like, wow, how did I get here? It's completely like this morning, I didn't wake up saying, "Oh yeah, tonight I'm going to be doing this," and there it is happening. So it's kind of cool, things like that. So anybody that's out there listening to the show and, get opportunities, you get an opportunity like that, grab it, because at the end of the day, you remember it as a very fond memory. And that's why I enjoy it. Now, I don't know how big, of a gang you can collect in Alaska, because I know it's such a vast state. It's almost a country unto its own. How many people you can gather up relatively easily to go out and do squatching. I'm sure it's probably a chore.
Yeah, my closest squatching buddy is about 5 hours away.
Oh, yeah. So, but I bet when you go out together, it's probably always something to remember, and it's always an enjoyable. Yeah. And that's the real fun about this. No matter how you cut it, you have these people that are outside the Bigfoot community. Well, I got something to do with your life. I'll tell you what. Squatching is a great life if you don't become over obsessed with it. And you got to remember, you got a family, you got work, you got other stuff to do. You got to take care of business. If you're getting into it too much and you're spending too much time, you need to take a break from it. Which I've done, and Chris knows this too. Like there's days, I'm done with the show. Tomorrow morning, I'll do a few little extra chores, like maybe midweek, I'll do I'll do the translation. But other than that, I don't think about the show till like Thursday or Friday or Saturday. And there's a reason why. I need that for my own sanity. I can't be thinking about this 24/7. There's times when you do, like, okay, something's going on. You gotta put your attention to it. But hey, I enjoy sports. I enjoy football. I enjoy baseball. I enjoy playing video games. A lot of people don't know that about me. I'm a gamer. Yeah. There's a lot of interests I have in life. In fact, a lot of people don't know that, I'm hopefully going back to playing with the fire department again, because what I have here is, these are all copies of my training certificates. As you can see, it's quite a book. So I do have a life outside of Bigfoot. My private investigation business, my stuff like that. I'm in the process now that COVID's kind of slipping behind us, moving forward. But I'll tell you what, and I think everybody can appreciate that going out squatching with some good friends, even on a bad day where we get nothing going on, is better than any other day of the work week. Because you're out there with friends in nature. You can appreciate nature, something we all appreciate. You can appreciate the camaraderie, the friendship, the food, the fun, the laughter, and, trying to put something out that people enjoy. To me, doing this podcast, and Chris knows this, it's not about the money. It's about, I'm glad that, the show is, the show right now generates enough revenue to pay for the platform. And that's wonderful. I do this because I like I like talking to people. I mean, I've never met Beans before today, but damn it, I'm going to be talking to him a lot more. I mean, it's almost chilling that when I talk to somebody and they're so in line with my beliefs and stuff like that. I'm like, wow, you know, it's really awesome. I get to meet somebody like Beans doing a show like this. So I've met a lot of people doing this show. I'm sure he's got to meet me a little bit and understands me a little bit better now, which is awesome. Hopefully he likes me and doesn't unfriend me tomorrow. You know, I've had to, you know, Chris has unfriended me like 5 times. But
by accident, maybe.
No, Chris and I, through the show, we've become brothers from another mother. You know, and that's the beauty of this thing. Chris and I, we love each other. We're brothers. You know, we're family. We're not just friends. We're family.
Regardless what you might hear.
Yeah. That's the beauty of this. There is good in this. And, you know, I just want to put that out there because there's so much, and I'm sorry to go on the rant, Beans, the last, you know, because I got to get this in because there are times when I have, you know, I look at all this arguments and bashing one another and stuff like that, and it gets to me. And yeah, I've done my fair share of, but I try to go after the hoaxers and the people that put out, you know, pseudoscience.
It's high school with monsters.
Yeah. High school with monsters and camping. But, you know, who has the biggest tent? My campfire is bigger than yours. But you know, but there is so much good to this. And, you know, people used to rag on, oh, you go to this conference and that conference. And, you know, I go to conferences because I like meeting people. That's the fun thing, hearing their stories. And I'm always humbled by people coming up and the things they say to me. It's humbling. I'm just a guy, you know. My grandson yesterday, my oldest grandson, you know, is becoming of age where he's starting to realize certain things. And he's now 8.5 and he's starting to learn things. And he goes, Grandpa, you've been on TV. Yeah. And yes, well, we'll get to that too, Cindy. Grandpa, you've been on TV. Yeah, I have. So you're a celebrity. Well, you know, in certain circles I am, but not really. I'm just me. I'm just Grandpa. I'm just me. That's what you get. It's just me. So anyway, let's start promoting Beans' book. Of course, it's on Amazon. The link will be in the description below to the show. It's there right now. And it's I'm sure it's going to be a great read. I can't wait to get it. And where can we find you on social media? And if you have a website or anything like that?
I have a website called alasquatchpodcast.com. It's ALASQUATCH podcast.com. You can find me on Facebook at Larry Beans Baxter. You can also find Alasquatch on Facebook. I've also got a Instagram account under Alasquatch that I've started making Bigfoot memes because I thought we were kind of lacking in the world of memes. So I've started cranking out some memes for the masses there.
That's right. My favorite is I have a meme that I use that I love I love Bigfoot memes. Love them to death. And my favorite is every once in a while I'll drop it is the picture of King Leonidas of the Spartans, you know, with his pose, and it says, "I declare a meme war." That's my I'll drop that in there. And but I love it. And you know what? If you don't mind, I'm going to link that on my website as well.
Go for it.
Go for it. Yeah. So I love to promote you because you're doing great work out there for a part of the country that gets very little coverage. And, you know, I'm very proud to have you represent that state.
Thank you, sir. I am awesome. I'm so awestruck to be on here. I was like, man, because I watch your show not occasionally, not all the time, but I try and get it in when I can. And I appreciate what you do, especially with the hoaxers and calling people out like that. I just, I can't stand that kind of stuff. And I appreciate what you do with that.
And my little field team that I have, it's kind of funny. Most of them, and you'd appreciate this, most of them are either current law enforcement or former law enforcement. They just, believe it or not, there's a lot of law enforcement guys that just flock to this because I guess we all like investigating stuff. And
yep, that's it. It's the investigative.
It's that investigative bug we have. Like,
well, Steve, when I retired, I was the investigation sergeant for my department, and if you didn't have the handle Squatch Detective, I would have had it.
I created that handle in 1998, and very first 1998, Squatchdetective@yahoo.com. That was my email. And then eventually in 2005, it became Squatchdetective.com. So just people used to start calling me that. So it was just something that happened. I wasn't calling myself that originally. So, but anyway, I want to thank you for coming on. It's been a real treat to have you on. We got to have, if something happens, please let me know. We got to have you on again, talk about it. And we'll get that description for the Alaskan Triangle below after the show, because I want to watch it. I'll probably watch it tonight or tomorrow morning.
I think our episode is the second one. I can't really speak to the other episodes in the series, but I know they did a really good job with basically we told them when we took the film crew out to Port Chatham with us, we basically told them, like, look, this is what we're going to do. We're not going to lie. We're not going to hoax anything. You guys can come with us. So every time we hear something, or every time something happens, it really happens. There's not a lot of fakery going on or anything. Sometimes you have to go back and refilm things because the camera wasn't on, but there's no manufactured crap.
Nick just brought up something that Steve, someone tried to take your domain name once, didn't they? What they tried to take actually was Squatch Detective Radio, and some anonymous person did for a while when I took a year off or 2 years off from the thing. And I actually contested that takeover and proved that, hey, I've had this is my domain, it's my show, yada, yada, yada. And guess what? The domain registrar gave it back to me. So, yeah. Anyway, yeah. And if people are wondering what I'm drinking tonight, I am drinking Diet Peach Snapple.
Yay!
And Beans, if you watch the show, you know exactly what I mean.
Give me a Snapple.
Give me a Snapple. So anyway, we'll be back. Of course, again, thank you a thousand times over, Beans. It's been a blast talking to you. I've had a great time. And I hope everybody else has had. We had a great crowd tonight, despite there being a major NFL game tonight that went in overtime, and unfortunately the Bills lost. So
whose ball is the devil?
But anyway, and there it is. See, people are doing it. They do this every week. Joan, give me a Snapple. You know, he must hate me for that. I can just hear him.
I'm sure that's not the only reason.
No, actually, it's not Joanne, it's Joan. But close enough.
What is the Snickers? You're not you when you're thirsty. Have a Snickers or a Snapple.
Yeah.
And you know the funny thing is my favorite Snickers commercial was the one with Betty White. But yeah, that was a suck thing this week too, with the loss of first it was Louis Anderson, and then I'm going and Meatloaf, Bob Saget, and Betty White. We've lost 4 within like a month.
I saw an article on something the other day that said like the celebrities we lost in 2022. I'm like, January's not even over yet.
Yeah.
And they've got enough to have an article about it.
Yeah.
Hate that.
Well, anyway, folks, we will be back here next Sunday night. Chris, do your thing.
Well, I just want to thank Mr. Larry Beans Baxter for being on with us and sharing his insight on the Alaskan Bigfoot, the Alaskan Killer Bigfoot.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It was an honor having you on, Larry. Thank you. And I want to thank everybody over in the chat, all the listeners, everybody, all the podcast listeners, and our wonderful chat room. I can't say enough about you guys. You make the show. We really appreciate having you, and it's an honor being here for you.
Amen.
If it's the first time watching us on YouTube, consider giving us a like and a subscribe. Share. Sharing is caring. It helps us get found in the search algorithm and helps other people find us. So
that's right. And if you want to see more shows like this, just give us a comment below telling us you love the show. And don't do it tonight. Do it till after the show's been posted. And that way it'll help with the algorithm too. So
you
folks
can put on there, Chris is bald. You know, it doesn't matter. Just leave something.
Yeah. Chris and I look like a couple of bowling balls. we put our heads together. It sounds like a bowling alley. But anyway, again, everybody, we want to wish everybody a happy and safe, healthy week. God, please, people, keep warm. Horrible weather. Anyway, again, we'll be back here next Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Squatchdtv.com. That's the link to the YouTube channel now, Squatchdtv.com. And we will be all here next week, full force. And folks, be safe, keep healthy, God bless, and we'll catch you all here next week.
Good night. Thank you.
Hey folks, you've been watching Squatch-D TV. Join us each week, Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for the latest on the Bigfoot mystery. As always, we thank you for being our loyal viewers and encourage all to subscribe to our YouTube page at youtube.com/Steve Kulls. As always, have a great week. Stay safe. God bless and keep on squatching.